All right, you all asked for it, so you're going to get it. We're diving into our ankles today. We're going to be covering 3 different areas for ankle strengthening. The first one is going to be proprioception. That word just means it's your body trying to figure out where you are in space. Another kind of fancy word to describe proprioception is kinesthetic awareness. Again, just a way your body can know where it is in space, whether it is the joint sensors giving feedback to your brain or your brain just predicting where your limbs are. That's my proprioception kind of movement, I guess. Number 2 is going to be dynamic ankle strength. So things like plyometrics and impacts. And number 3 is going to be isolated ankle strength, what exercises you can kind of do. So the first one we're going to dive into is we're going to dive into our proprioception. So there's a couple of basic concepts of proprioception you can understand. The first concept is that regardless of the type of exercise we're doing, proprioception is about disturbing our sensory system to challenge our ability to find out where we are in space. So an example might be, I have a weight right here, and I'm going to stand on one foot because that makes it tough for me to balance. And instead of just holding a position, I might change and move the weight, and in turn what that's doing is forcing my ankle to stabilize myself in space. So option number 1 is to just move your mass, that is your body, or an additional mass, that is like a weight, around a planted foot. Example would be like a lunge and reach. A lunge and reach. I'm changing my mass, moving it around my ankle, and forcing it to stabilize. I could rotate, I could do whatever. The point is, ankle is planted. Number 2 would be, we're not changing any of the mass, but we're changing our sensory system. For example, I might stand on one foot and close my eyes. Makes it more difficult to stabilize because I removed the sensory aspect of my eyes, and now I'm demanding my vestibular system, which is my inner ears, to work and stabilize myself. Now, number 3 is I don't actually have one of these, but the surface that you stand on, let's pretend this is a really unstable surface, is, well, unstable. So you see things like Air-X pads or any sort of thing at all that's kind of wibbly wobbly on the bottom, that forces your foot to stabilize in space, because what it's doing is causing a it's shifting the ground underneath you, and your feet have to understand where they are. So the second one of this, as I mentioned, I get this weight out of here, are things that involve impacts. So we have simple movements like a hop, which is a bilateral impact, but we also have single leg hops. Now with impacts, we need to think about it in 2 different ways. We need to think about it in how many feet are contacting the ground, 1 or 2. Think about the complexity of it as well. Am I having to jump over something? Am I having to redirect from left to right, right to left? All of these play an important role when it comes to how your ankle functions. So yes, we can think about plyometrics and things like up and down hopping, and my ankles have to strengthen to handle that. But now we can add a little bit of that sensory demand by having to jump side to side. Maybe a light side to side, I'm closing my eyes, controlling where I am in space. So again, what we're doing there, taking the impact, forcing our ankle to be stiff and strong when it hits the ground and transmit forces when we're doing movements like this. Number 3 would be something like an isolated exercise. So with something like as simple as, let's take this kettlebell here, and doing a single or double leg calf raise. Now, with our ankles, we have lots of things going on, not just our calves. We might want to bend our knees so we engage our soleus as well. Our soleus is called monoarticulate. So a biarticulate joint, if I think about like this, and this is my calf and my foot right here, we're using my forearm as my calf and my foot. Your biarticulate joint crosses 2 joints. So your ankle and your knee. Your ankle and your knee. That's going to be your gastroc. So that's the one with the 2 heads up here. The other one is your soleus. Your soleus is lower muscle down here. That's monoarticulate. So back to my forearm foot example, it just crosses 1 joint. So understanding the anatomy of the foot is really important. Now when we think about the ankle, we cannot just think about it in terms of those muscles, but also your foot. So doing barefoot exercise where your feet have to grip the ground are really important. And so that's where you might take off your shoe, you might stand on a nice surface and challenge yourself to stabilize in more, I guess, barefoot settings. Now the key is we don't want to do all three at once. We don't want to do weighted, eyes closed jumps. That doesn't make any sense. That's a lot of demand going on. We want to think about each category, our plyometrics, our perturbations that are focused on proprioception, or maybe the isolated exercises, and use those together. So maybe one day I'm doing more plyometrics, and with that day I'm doing more intrinsic foot muscle exercises. Maybe another day I'm doing isolated work, and I'm also doing something with an unstable surface. That's how you can layer it together. Now, it's up to you to understand where you are and what you need, but typically we like to think about the most dynamic ones, like the hops and the skips and the jumps and the plyometrics, as most impactful for the system as a whole. Not just my feet, but my whole body. When you think about the isolated intrinsic foot ones, those are exercises that we can probably do without having to be concerned the whole taxation on our body. And then proprioception, maybe that's something you want to add in the warm-up because it's kind of activating the entire nervous system. So I hope that makes sense. Thanks for voting. As always, feel free to like, subscribe, and follow along. I hope you enjoy this. Appreciate you listening. And again, as always, take care and thank you.